Tonight, will the EU-Tunisia migrant deal add to further migrant abuses? And remembering a Toronto school principal who died by suicide after being accused of racism. We cover stories about the sacking of China's foreign minister, warnings of more extreme weather patterns, and a troubling report on treatment of Muslims in France. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Catherine Bullock. International law experts are warning that the EU agreement with Tunisia to curb migration flow to Mediterranean shores could lead to severe rights violations. The Memorandum of Understanding was signed in mid-July after a crucial meeting between EU Commission head Ursula von der Leyen, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and Tunisian President Kais Syed. As per the MOU, Brussels agreed to give Tunis financial and technical support to deter Europe-bound migration, which has been increasingly originating from Tunisian shores. Only a few details of the agreement have been made public. The deal aims to prevent migrants from reaching Europe irregularly, increase returns of Tunisian citizens who have no permission to stay in Europe, and facilitate repatriation from Tunisia to third countries of migrants of other nationalities. Human rights organizations point out that the agreement comes amid reports of escalating violence and abuses against sub-Saharan African migrants by Tunisian authorities. They say this could replicate the problem that came from similar agreements with Libya over the past few years. Eve Gedde, Amnesty International's Advocacy Director for Europe, calls the agreement ill-judged. Gedde says the agreement signals EU acceptance of increasingly repressive behavior by Tunisia's president and government. Gedde says at the time EU and Tunisia were preparing to sign this agreement, Tunisian authorities left hundreds of people, including children, stranded at Tunisia's desert borders without water, food, or shelter. The memorandum is strongly championed by Italian Prime Minister Meloni. Meloni's far-right government has long vowed to stop surging migration flows to Italy's southern shores, trying to convince EU partners of the common need to, quote, defend European borders. A Toronto District School Board educator has taken his own life at 60 years. Richard Bilkstow had a 24-year career with the TDSB. He was working as a principal in one of the board's schools. During a diversity and inclusion training session for administrators in 2021, Bilkstow questioned the facilitator's assertion that Canada was more racist than the United States. The facilitators labelled his comments as examples of white supremacy. His comments were often raised later as examples of white supremacy in subsequent training sessions. This humiliated Bilkstow, leading to a mental health crisis by his second training session. He experienced this as bullying and requested the board to investigate the incident, which was denied. Bilkstow took an extended leave from work. Upon his return, he was not reinstated to his previous role. His work contract was revoked. He was also excluded from attending the school board graduation ceremony. Friends and family say Bilkstow's death is an indicator for lack of support and protection from the TDSB in cases of accusations of racism. The TDSB and Ontario Education Minister have expressed their condolences. They recognise Bilkstow's unwavering commitment to students of all ages and his efforts to promote their success. China has sacked Foreign Minister Qin Gang, who has not been seen in public for a month. The government has reappointed Wang Yi as the country's top diplomat. Chinese media reports that today, China's top legislature, the National People's Congress Standing Committee, removed Qin. Known as a pioneer of the so-called wolf warrior diplomacy, Qin was the youngest member of China's State Council, the de facto cabinet. He was considered to be a confidant of President Xi Jinping and was appointed foreign minister in December 2022. Before becoming the country's top diplomat, he served as Chinese ambassador to the US. Qin's last public appearance was on June 25th, when he hosted counterparts from Russia, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. His absence from a high-level ASEAN summit in Indonesia had raised eyebrows. However, the Chinese Foreign Ministry had said he was unavailable because of health issues. Qin met his US counterpart Antony Blinken in Beijing early last month. He oversaw the resumption of diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran in March. Wang has previously served as foreign minister for nearly 10 years. The NPC Standing Committee has been empowered since 2021 to appoint or remove any official from office at the State Council. Earlier, appointment or removal of officials from the de facto cabinet would only be approved at a national congress of the Chinese lawmakers. The Windsor Islamic Association has been in talks with the local public school board in response to a significant number of student absences on the day the pride flag was raised at a nearby public elementary school. Some families affiliated with the Windsor Mosque also send their children to Northwood Public School. The absences were part of what seems to have been a Canada-wide protest against transgender instruction in Canadian schools. Syed Khan, the director of the association, says the school board has taken measures to address some of the concerns raised by parents and students. Khan says the Muslim community trusts that the board will continue working on resolving the remaining issues. He did not mention the specific concerns shared with the school board. The news comes after a recent recording released by True North, an independent online media outlet, captures a teacher's expression of disgust at the number of absences during the Pride flag-raising event. The teacher referred to the student absences as an act of hatred. In the recording, Muslim students can be heard explaining that they do not hate the LGBT community, but do not support it. Muslim News Canada has not been able to verify the authenticity of the recording. The Greater Essex County District School Board responded to the incident, apologising to parents for the teacher's inappropriate comments and emphasising their commitment to acceptance and inclusion. The incident is being handled internally. The status of the teacher involved has not been confirmed. For more on Russian jets damaging a US drone, stay tuned. A leading British climate scientist says continued inaction by the global community and failures to meet critical climate pledges is putting the world on course to warm about 2.5 degrees Celsius. This temperature is a full degree higher than targets. Robert Watson says as countries continue to pump greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, the world's temperature will keep rising. Watson says this will lead to more extreme weather events, such as heat waves, floods, forest fires, and droughts. Last month was the hottest ever June across the globe. The sizzling weather continued into July, toppling more records as southern Europe, parts of the US, China, and Mexico saw blistering temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius. A professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Science at the University of Pennsylvania says July is now expected to be the warmest month in modern history and plausibly the past 120,000 years. Scientific research shows that greenhouse gas emissions are making heat waves hotter than they would otherwise have been. Climate scientists say that if the Paris Agreement signatories fail to honour their emissions pledge within 3 decades, extreme weather events will become more frequent. A newly released video shows what the US Air Force calls Russian fighter jets engaging in unprofessional behavior or interacting with an American drone in Syria. The US Air Force says the interaction damaged an MQ-9 drone on a mission against the terrorist group ISIS. It says the Russian fighter aircraft flew dangerously close to the drone Sunday night, deploying flares from a position directly overhead. The US Air Force says there were only a few meters of separation between aircraft. General Alex Grenkowicz, the US Air Force commander in the region, is calling on the Russian forces in Syria to put an end to unprovoked and unprofessional behavior. He says the Russian fighters' disregard for flight safety detracts from the US mission to ensure the defeat of ISIS. The US Commission on International Religious Freedom has issued a concerning policy briefing addressing religious freedom issues within the European Union. The briefing highlighted France and its treatment of Muslims. These include restrictions on religious attire, the legal treatment of so-called sects, the controversial anti-separatism law aimed at enforcing, quote, French values. The briefing drew attention to newly imposed provisions that place hefty fines on religious leaders and threaten to close places of worship if they encourage people to undermine French law. Critics point out that the flexible terminology used in these policies can be misused by state authorities to exert pressure on individuals or groups they consider undesirable. A UK-based civil rights group, CAGE, has documented France's systematic policies that interfere in the life of Muslims. The documentation reveals the creation of 101 units nationwide to monitor Islam and Muslims. They also found that over 23,000 Muslim organizations and businesses were placed on a secret blacklist and subjected to strict monitoring. Over 600 Muslim-owned entities were closed. Over 45 million euros or 65 million Canadian dollars was seized. Recently, CAGE's campaign director, Mohammed Rabbani, attempted to travel to France following the fatal shooting of a teenager that led to widespread protests. However, he was detained in Paris for nearly 24 hours and sent back to London. The French government's Ministry of Interior cited a particularly high terrorist threat as the reason for the entry ban. It accused Rabbani of being part of a radical Islamist movement and spreading slanderous words about supposed Islamic persecution and mass surveillance by Western governments, including France. Thank you for watching. Our news is produced by Sound Vision, which is a not-for-profit organization. We need your support for donations. Please scan the QR code on our broadcast or visit muslimnetwork.tv to donate now so we can continue to amplify the voices of Muslims in Canada and abroad.